today's lesson is byvariate data. There's a bunch of topics that we are going to cover in this lesson, and the homework that goes along with it is a worksheet. All right. We're going to talk about numerical data first. Numerical data is exactly what it sounds. It's data consisting of numbers. So any data that has numbers in it is numeric. Here's an example of some numeric data, and we're going to use this to answer some questions. How many students are in the class? Well, we're going to assume that the only people in the class are boys and girls. So there are 12 plus 18, 30 students in the class. What percent of the students in the class are boys? Remember, let's review this. A percent is a part out of a whole. So, what percent of the class are boys? How many boys are there? There are 12 boys out of 30 students. If you divide that, you'll get 0.4, which is 40%. What percent of the students are girls? Well, there are 18 girls out of 30 kids in the class, which if I reduce, I get 6/10, 60%. Why must these sums be parts of 100? Well, because it's only boys and girls. So the total class has to be represented by 100. What percent of the students ate breakfast this morning? Well, if you look at the numbers, 28 breakfast up here, 28 breakfast this morning. So 20 out of 30, 2/3, which is 0.6 repeating. So that would be 67% if I round to the nearest percent. What percent of students pass the math test? Well, 25 pass the math test out of 30, which is 5/6. That's 83%. Why is it possible that the sum of these parts doesn't equal 100? Because not everybody ate breakfast. You can eat breakfast and pass the math test, or they're not a whole. All right, we talked about numeric data, and now we're talking about categorical data. Categorical data is data that is sorted into categories, such as colors, ranges of measurements, or other attributes of the data. Generally, there are only finitely many categories, so it's a limited amount. So, for example, hair color. Okay, now, mind you, you can have any color hair, but there's a limited amount of possibilities. Black, brown, blonde, red, other. Possible survey questions. What is your color of hair, or do you have dark hair? Music. Some possible categories. Rap, jazz, pop, etc. Possible survey question. What's your favorite type of music? Art. Possible categories. Do you like watercolors, pencil, crayons, etc. Paint. What type of art do you produce? Would be a question. Fruit. Apples, orange, banana. What is your favorite fruit? Ecosystems. You could do aquatic, terrestrial. Do you know what an ecosystem is? Would be a question. I'm not even going to fill that in. If you were reading a table that had categorical data labeled swimming, football, and basketball, what might the larger topic? Sports. Choose a topic that you would collect data about and list possible categories related to that topic. All right, well, let's do favorite subject. And if we wanted to do that, we'd list all the subjects. Math, ELA, social studies, etc. Okay. Categorical questions are used to collect categorical data. These questions usually have word responses. For example, do you own at one dog is a categorical question because the answer is either yes or no. Numerical survey questions are used to collect numerical data. Numerical data sometimes comes from counting. It can sometimes come from measurement. These questions usually have number of responses. For example, how many dogs do you own is a numerical question because you want to answer it with a number. So we are going to decide if these are categorical or numerical. Are you male or female? That is categorical. What is your favorite color? Categorical. How many dress shirts do you own? Would be numerical. Are you an only child? That would be yes or no, so categorical. How many siblings? Would be numerical. What were the class scores on the last test? Numerical. What types of birds did we observe? Categorical. What are the income levels of different cities in my state? That would be numerical. That's easy enough. State whether the question is categorical or numerical, then rewrite the question in another form. How many video games do you own? That is numerical. Rewrite in another form. Which video games do you own? Games do you own? Create a categorical question and then rewrite it as a numerical question. We'll do that in class. All right, now we're going to talk about byvariate data. 10 different 8th graders were asked the following questions. Do you have a curfew? And are you assigned chores at home? Data was collected on their responses and recorded in the table below. So, take a look at this. This is student A. They said yes, they have a curfew, and yes, they do chores. And it is for all 10 students. Now, we are going to use the sections of the Venn diagram to record the number of students in each category. Be sure to include the number of students with neither chores nor curfew outside the circle. So, look, inside this circle for curfew would be yes, they have a curfew. This would be yes to chores. This would be yes, curfew, and yes, chores. Out here would be no curfew and no chores. So, curfew and chores. Yes, yes. I'm going to put one hash in there. No curfew and no chores out here. No curfew, but yes, chores. So, no curfew would be outside this circle, but yes, chores would be there. Yes, yes, in here. Yes, curfew, no chores, in there. So, in the curfew circle, but outside the chores circle. We're on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, no. Yes, yes. No curfew, yes, chores. No, no, and yes, yes. So, we've got 4 here, 1 here, 2 here, and 3 here. Make sure that when you do this, that your data adds up to the total amount, which is, in this case, 10, and they do indeed add up to 10. How many students were surveyed? That is total 10. This is called the number of observations or sample size. How many students surveyed had chores? Well, if we look in the chores circle, there's 2 here and 4 here. That would be 6. How many students had a curfew? There are 5. What percent of the students had both chores and a curfew? Well, both chores and a curfew would be 4 out of 10, which is 40%. What percent of the students had neither chores nor a curfew? Well, there are 3 outside, so 3 out of 10, which is 30%. What percent of the students had chores? What percent of the students who had chores also had a curfew? Well, there are 6 kids that had chores, so that's the whole. And how many of them also have a curfew? 4. That's 4 out of 6, which is 2/3, 67%. What percent of the students had a curfew also had chores. Okay, so how many had a curfew? That's 5. That's the total. What percent also had chores? 4 out of 5. Remember, a percent is a part out of a whole. Part out of a whole. You need to remember that. Matt Have thinks that most students have both a curfew and chores. Does the data support his claim? Well, look, only 4 out of 10 have both. 4 out of 10, which is 40%, so no, not most. It would have to be over 50% to be most. Okay, two-way frequency tables. Is just another way to look at byvariate data. So we're going to use the data from the other page, from what we just did, and you already have that filled in. So students with chores, and they also had a curfew. That's that middle section. There are 4 there. Students with no chores but had a curfew. There was 1 in that section. Total 5, that's students with a curfew. Students with no curfew who had chores, there were 2 in that section. And this group right here is no curfew and no chores. There were 3. That adds up to 5. Our total, if we go across, 6 had chores, 4 had no chores, and that adds up both ways. It needs to add up to 10. Okay. So these totals are curfew, no curfew, chores, no chores. Both ways they need to add up to 10 because each person needed to answer both questions and there were 10 people. Okay. Circle the number that indicates the sample size for the whole survey. That would be 10. What percent of all students had chores? Well, students with chores is 6 out of 10, so 60%. Draw a square around the number that indicates the total number of students who had chores. So, students who had chores. Okay, here's chores, 6 of them. What percent of students who had chores also had a curfew? Well, there are 6 total, and 4 had a curfew. So 4 out of 6, 2/3, 67%. Draw a triangle around the number that indicates the total number of students who did not have a curfew. Well, students with no curfew is right here. 5 had no curfew. What percent of the students who did not have a curfew also did not have chores? So, how many do not have a curfew? It's 5. And how many did not have chores? 3 out of 5. Which is 60%. Draw a parallelogram around the number that indicates the total number of students who had a curfew. Well, students with a curfew, right there, parallelogram. 5. What percent of students who had a curfew also had chores? Well, let's see. How many people had chores? 4 out of 5, which is 80%. Raji thinks that most students who were surveyed who had chores were more likely to have a curfew. Does the data support Raji's claim? So what is it saying? The students who were surveyed who had chores were more likely to have a curfew. Well, let's look. Students with chores, there are 6 of them. How many have a curfew? 4 out of 6. 4 out of 6. So yes, he's right, 67%. He is correct. Because if you look, 33%, 2 out of 6 don't have a curfew. No curfew.